Now, tensions between NATO and Russia have flared up yet again, with NATO officially opening its command center in a Finnish city bordering Russia. The latter is now ramping up its bases and building military infrastructure near the Finnish border, according to recent satellite imagery confirmed by NATO officials. Sources say as of now, the move appears to be in the early stages of a longer-term expansion. NATO officials say this is nothing like the build-up along the Ukraine border before Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. Finnish defense officials predict that if the high-intensity phase of the war in Ukraine ends, Russia will redeploy thousands of troops to the Finnish frontier. As for NATO's command center, it began operations in Mikkeli, Finland on the 3rd of October and is located approximately 300 kilometers from St. Petersburg, Russia. The headquarters work will strengthen NATO's defense capabilities and increase security in Finland. At present, it employs about 10 people, with a peacetime staff expected to reach 50. Now, according to the Finnish Defense Ministry, the headquarters will plan and coordinate NATO ground forces activities in Northern Europe. Under normal conditions, it will be responsible for NATO drills and other activities. In emergency conditions, it will plan, command and control land operations and defense in the High North. The so-called High Alert Headquarters will operate around the clock under the authority of NATO's command in Norfolk, Virginia, on the U.S. East Coast. Drone sightings and air incursions, including in Copenhagen and Munich, are the recent flashpoints between NATO and Russia. On the 10th of September, a swarm of Russian drones flew into Poland's airspace, forcing NATO aircraft to scramble to intercept them and shoot down some of the devices. It was the first direct encounter between NATO and Moscow since Russia launched its all-out war on Ukraine in 2022. All right, for more on this, Professor Scott Lucas of International Politics, Clinton Institute, University College Dublin. He joins us live from Wicklow, Ireland. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor. Of course, we've been talking about this as well, and NATO, that remains a big flashpoint for Russia as well. With this new command center, how do you see things panning out in the future?
Yes, I think we need to cut through some Russian propaganda, which is exaggerating this in terms of this is a huge threat to Russia. It's actually something very different. This NATO headquarters, which is, to coordinate land forces in the northern sector, has been planned since autumn of 2023. That was only a few months, you might remember, after Finland joined NATO as its 31st state. It is not there as a base for thousands of troops. So it's very, very different from the Russian buildup in that sense. Instead, as you mentioned, you're talking about 10 personnel to start off with in Mikkeli, where this is located. And then this will expand to around 50 personnel. So it's part of, what you would consider NATO's standard planning as you develop the bloc with not only Finland, but Sweden joining. That said, tensions have escalated, but they have escalated because of the Russians. And you also mentioned this, that in recent weeks, we've talked about major Russian drone incursion into Poland, around 20 of them, some of whom were shot down. We're talking about the 3 Russian fighter jets that were over Estonian airspace for 12 minutes before they were shooed away by Italian fighter jets. And we're talking about other episodes of Russian hybrid warfare that we've had, episodes of sabotage, certain cyber attacks which have taken place. Now, this doesn't mean that Russia's going for an all-out war beyond Ukraine at this point, but it is conducting these probing operations. So in response to that, what NATO has done is they have Operation Eastern Sentry, and this is an operation to link up Finland, other Baltic states, with states like Poland to establish the drone defense in particular, in case Russia does try to start launching waves of drones beyond Ukraine over the airspace of other NATO countries.
Right. Now, Mr. Lucas, just because you mentioned that this escalation is, of course, attributed to Russia, I just want to come in and maybe perhaps seek some clarity for our viewers as well. We've been seeing what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. We've been seeing this for the past how many ever years that this war has continued since 2022. We saw that Donald Trump said that he could get this war done in 24 hours, then 100 days, and that's a stalemate again that we've been witnessing. That being said, do you think at this point this war has taken a rather cyclical nature, and would you actually even call it an escalation at this point, or do you think this is just something that we have been seeing a repeat of, or perhaps something that occurs at every regular interval?
I mean, this Russian invasion is in layers where it is right now. So, for example, if we talk about the battlefront, especially in eastern Ukraine, Russia has made gradual, but very, very gradual advances since 2023. They've only taken 4 towns since then. They've taken about 0.4 of 1% of NATO territory. So, in other words, about 1/250th of Ukraine territory, I should say. And that advance has slowed in September to only a couple of hundred square kilometers. At the same time, what you're seeing here is an increase of Ukraine's counterattacks into Russia. So in the past 24 hours, they've hit yet another oil refinery, this time in Russian-occupied Crimea. They've hit a couple of airfields, and they've hit a major manufacturer of explosives. So you have Russia, which is hitting Ukraine's civilian sites and its energy infrastructure from the air, but Ukraine is also punching back. I wouldn't quite call it a stalemate, but what I would say here is no one is going to win this on the military front in the near future. You might then ask me, well, what's the state of the diplomacy around this? And while we have, this idea that we could have talks, that we could talk about, for example, freezing the front line in eastern Ukraine, the fundamental here is that one man doesn't want talks to freeze this, and that's a guy named Vladimir Putin, because he still wants to take more territory, especially in the east of Ukraine, and he's not going to stop his attacks while he thinks he has a chance to kind of grind down Ukraine from the air and on the ground.
All right. Well, Professor Lucas, thank you so much for joining us on WION World as One with your insights on this.
Thank you.
For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.